Operations Facility Manager's Position. You got there. How do you measure success and advance your career? By Lloyd Richards, Jr. Next slide, please. Everyone has been muted for audio quality. If you have any questions during the presentation, please be sure and type your questions into the chat box, and we'll go over them at the end during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Next slide, please. Okay. The FMCC provides many services to the FM community, such as Ask the Expert, Find a Consultant, Locate a Speaker, and an online educational resource. You may find more information at their website, fmcc.ifma.org. Next slide, please. We'd also like to thank our sponsors today. And then also, I do want to let you know that the webinar will be recorded, and a PowerPoint will be distributed after the recording, after the presentation, rather. Next slide. During the webinar, we will have some polls, so I do encourage you to respond to those polls. And also, at the end of the webinar, there's a post-webinar survey. I encourage you to take that as well. The board and STAG team eagerly await those results. Next slide, please. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenter, Mr. Lloyd.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Lloyd Richards, and the learning objectives I'm going to go over today are going to be becoming the go-to source and trusted expert in your industry or facility. I'm going to discuss measuring success and advancing your career. I'll give some keys to operations and project or facility managers' success. And then the fourth learning objective I'll discuss is the importance of relationship management. Once again, my name is Lloyd Richards. I'm the president and owner of an event consulting and management company, JLR Events and Logistics. I'm very fortunate to have had a number of years of facility and event management, primarily in citywide events as well as large sporting venues and sporting events. Those events have been in the NFL as well as NCAA sports operations, as well as facility management. Some of the recent events that I've been a part of include Super Bowl 48 that took place in East Rutherford, New Jersey, the big New York Super Bowl. I've been a part of the last three Final Fours, men's Final Fours, working on the concert series that's a part of that. I'm actually going to be a part of the next one here in Indianapolis in just a few weeks. I've worked on the men's and women's college World Series. Also, I've been very fortunate again to have done some citywide Olympic formatted events, not only here in the city of Houston, but also in Cleveland, Ohio. So what I'd like to do is start with a quick poll and just get a sense of what everyone's motivation is today. As you can see, the questions are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Just getting a sense of, is this something that you're seeking for your individual advancement? Would you like takeaways for you? Or curious to see if an individual may be in a position to hire or promote staff. That's primarily the targeted groups, I should say, of the presentation. So I was curious to get a sense of that.
Okay, can you see the results on your screen, Lloyd?
Let's see. Let me bring up my, would it be in the control box?
No, okay, I'll just read them to you. It says 60% said seeking self-advancement takeaways, 20% just curious, and 20% none of the above.
Excellent.
And 0% you are in a position to hire.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's helpful because, again, that gives me a sense of the group and kind of what some of the motivation is. So, awesome. Well, seeking self-advancement takeaways, this will be very beneficial because one of the goals, again, is to just give you an idea of the things that you can utilize to put yourself in that position to move forward in what is sometimes considered somewhat of an ambiguous industry or field, this world of operations and logistics that we live in. So, we'll start by talking about objective number one, which is becoming the trusted expert. I'm going to give some ideas of what that looks like and talk about four key items in this section. I'm going to talk about the path of the operations and facility manager. We're going to talk about, the fact that it's usually a proven decision maker or a top performer. I have this concept of the spoke in the middle of the wheel that we'll discuss. And then finally, I'll discuss an idea of the conduit in the middle. So the path takens vary, but there are commonalities. I know myself coming out of college and wanted to be kind of in this world of operations. I wasn't really sure which direction to go, but there were some things that helped mold my career as I moved along that path. You know, when I'm asked by younger folks or people that are starting out their career, you know, how did you get where you are? What can I do to go in that direction? I often tell them no two paths are the same. We've all got varied backgrounds, varied degrees of education and experiences, but it's not something that's limiting or would prevent an individual from ascending in this world of operations or logistics or facility management. Oftentimes, however, we're given responsibility for areas we have a little familiarity. You know, because of being productive or doing a really good job in our areas, you know, we end up taking in other areas that maybe we're not as familiar with, and there's sometimes not formal training, which again, being usually the go-getters that we are, we're able to quickly figure things out and continue moving forward. These individuals are often first-time managers of personnel. Again, do a great job in the role you're in, and all of a sudden now you're leading others and they're reporting to you. Another thing that I think is somewhat of a commonality here is that oftentimes these individuals are first-time managers of large or multiple venues. Again, something that's obviously very challenging, usually not with a lot of training, but something that's pretty common in this role. These individuals are typically proven decision makers and top performers. You see individuals that are safe and consistent decision makers. You know, very highly productive area workers or supervisors. They're highly efficient with their time and resources, and they're accountable in all areas. So this is kind of some of the things that I think are pretty commonplace with this area and in this operations world that can bring some kind of structure to what this individual looks like and who these individuals are. The spoke in the middle of the wheel. Typically here, the idea is that this is a person that is usually the one that holds everything together. They're always busy, but they tend to get everything done anyway. Usually many different areas within an organization or many individuals on a team or within an organization depend on this individual to get their job done. Again, the trusted expert, you know, everybody goes to them because they know that regardless of how crazy their schedule is, regardless of how much they're doing, they're the one can get it done. They're the one that keeps it all together and make sure that productivity stays really high. The conduit in the middle. There's not much that's more confusing than seeing all the cabling that runs through an infrastructure, whether it's a stadium or just back a house of a building. But this is kind of an interesting concept for me because what I believe is the trusted expert serves as that conduit in the middle. They're the piping or the tubing through which communication flows. So this analogy really talks more about communication. You see that raw electricity at the top of the screen, and to me, that sometimes is communication that is maybe less than desirable. Maybe there's a problem or there's an incident or something that requires management that a lot of folks maybe do not want to handle or know it's going to be very disruptive or less than pleasant to manage. So the trusted expert has to be this transformer and take what I consider to be this raw, high-voltage information and be able to kind of work it as a transformer would and make it very low-voltage and usable information. So the idea here is being someone who's able to communicate at such a level that you're taking what's going to be something that's not very pleasant, managing it, not manipulating or changing, but just bringing it to the decision makers or the masses if need be, but bringing it to that group so that they're able to use this information and then again being able to reverse that and maybe taking the response back to a group that's not as happy to hear about it and making it user-friendly. You know, they may not like it, but at least present it in such a way that they're able to be productive and do their jobs. So again, this person is typically in the middle of upper management and kind of everyone else, whether that's management above them or subordinates below them. They're going to have to manage upward and downward communication very well to be successful in this role. This person is typically responsible for budgets and productivity, which is obviously very important to the overall organization. They have an impact on morale because, again, if there is a problem, they generally can diffuse it by calming everyone down. So it's very important to acknowledge that the role they have when it comes to the morale of not only the organization but leadership as well. Because they have so many contacts with not only the individuals within an organization, but typically externally, okay, the operations and logistics world, the facility managers obviously have a lot of vendors, stakeholders, and clients that they're interacting with. They're going to have a huge impact on the image of not only their team, but the organization as a whole. So again, these are some of the things that are very important and kind of central to this conduit in the middle of managing information and being kind of the face of a team and or the organization. So I'll quickly review objective number 1. Again, the trusted expert. Talked about the fact that the path of that individual and that, that operations and facility manager, that path varies, but there's definitely some commonalities, definitely some things that are consistent within who those individuals are, what they look like, and the steps that they can take to continue moving along in their careers. They're typically proven decision makers and obviously top performers. The spoke in the middle of the wheel. Again, these are usually the individuals that kind of sit in the middle of a lot of the different areas and different departments, or within their team, a lot of individuals depend on them. And one of their key roles is kind of being this conduit in the middle, or this person that manages communication upward, downward. They have a huge impact on the morale of the team, and of course the image of the team and or the organization as well. At this point, I'd like to do a second participant poll and just take a look at the different makeup of this group. So in looking at the diversity and just the age groups of today's attendees, if you could take a look at that and quickly select your age range, I'd greatly appreciate it. Hey, Joshua, you can just let me know what you get on the results if you could. Again, this is something that I think is kind of instrumental because it'll give a demographical look at not only the group that we have today, but kind of what the workplace is as we all know it is now.
Did I give you the results? I may have been on mute.
Oh, yeah, I think you're muted.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
29% said 20 to 34, 14% said 35 to 45, 29% said 46 to 55, and 29% said 56 and above.
Excellent. Again, this is something that I was hoping that the results would be as they are right there, where there's a pretty good mixture in the group of age. And honestly, this is something that will kind of come into play a little further in the presentation, but very important because it gives a broad range and scope of what our workplace looks like today. So this is something that will kind of help me, again, as we go along on our little journey here with this presentation. Objective number 2, we're going to talk about gauging success and advancing one's career. I'm going to go over several points here, and I'll quickly touch on them and then dive in a little further. I'm going to talk about the fact that there's no uniform mechanism to measure or gauge success. I'll discuss the importance of revenue and productivity, others understanding the role, appreciation of the role that you have, and then the definition of successfully doing your job. I'll then discuss being innovative and taking risks, and then the last point I'll make in this objective is the fact that personnel selection choices are so important. So, no uniform mechanism to measure or gauge success. Within different standards can be very different within industry, from industry to industry, but sometimes these standards may vary even within the same company. One measure of success or how productive an organization or even a team is something that, again, could just almost be left up to interpretation when you're talking about the operations or that facility manager role. Clearly, revenue and productivity are the most easy to, they're the easiest elements to point at, and they're essential, but they should not be the only measure. The thing that I think is important here is that the process should be just as important as the output. And the process is obviously what's essential to the role of an operations or logistics or facility manager individual. It's really important that others understand the role that you have. The scope of the role is really understood. Individuals will realize that it's important. They'll even have a sense of, yeah, that's kind of what the individual's in charge of or what managing a facility entails, but rarely do they truly have a good understanding of the scope of the role and what all the minute details are, and that's okay. What's really important is that the right people understand the scope of the role. The right people understand exactly what the role is and the different elements that the individual has to do to make sure that that role is successful. Once there's an understanding of the role, that will lead to my next point, which is the appreciation of the role. Obviously, it ties back right to understanding the role because it's critical to appreciation. There's no way for somebody to truly appreciate it if they don't understand it. This role is usually very critical and usually very heavily dependent upon, but is it really appreciated? You know, and sometimes people get very comfortable with an understanding of things going along the way they're supposed to. And this idea is to kind of break that mold and you know, obviously when the time is right and it's practical, just to make sure that there's an appreciation with the understanding of what this role is that you have as a facility manager. The definition of successfully doing your job, what does that mean? Clearly, that's going to vary from organization to organization, like we said, from industry to industry, or within the same organization and from state to state or city to city. But you have to define what that is within your team and within your leadership structure. That, again, is critical to the whole idea of understanding and creating that appreciation, is defining what successfully doing your job is. Difficult for you to move along in your career or within an organization if folks don't truly have an understanding of what it is that you do and what it means when you're doing that job successfully. One of the things that I think is critical to being advanced and moving along is being innovative and taking risks. We've all kind of heard this, we understand that, but it's just important to not allow yourself to become complacent. In my role in football operations, I've worked for a number of different organizations, and it's basically a cycle. And it's one of those things where you basically do the same thing kind of year in and year out, regardless of how some of the elements may vary. It's kind of the same. It was important to always try to stay atop of that, stay ahead of the game, and try to think of things differently, be innovative, and be willing to do things a little different than they were done in the past. Do things always work out exactly the way you hope? Absolutely not. But being willing to take that risk is oftentimes seen by leadership as a positive, not a negative. Being willing to step out of your comfort zone, try something different, push the envelope a little bit. Again, something that's going to be really important in engaging that, in advancing one's career, I should say. Being responsible for individuals on your team is one of the most important things that you can do to show your ability to lead and obviously manage people. But those personnel selection choices are so important. It's important to select strong team members that think and see things maybe a little differently than you do. Again, it's important to build on areas on your team. If you're in this capacity to choose individuals, it's important to seek them out to shore up areas that maybe are not as strong. So obviously countering strengths and weaknesses and putting together a team that is diverse and well-talented, but also, you know, individuals that may not see things exactly as you do to give different perspectives. So again, gauging success and advancing one's career. These are some points that I think are that can be very helpful in that area. Discuss the fact that there's no uniform mechanism to measure or gauge success, but it's important to work towards that. Revenue and productivity are clearly the most important elements when we're talking about within a business or any kind of industry. I talked about the fact that it's important for others to understand the role, which then leads to the appreciation of the role. Once you have those two things down, then the definition of successfully doing your job is something that you're able to convey easier. In order to continue moving your career along as an operations, logistics, facility manager individual, it's important to stay and be innovative and take risks. And again, personnel selection choices are so critical, not only to the success of your team, but to show your skills as a leader, your ability to make good judgment calls, and your ability to manage individuals. The next objective, the keys to success, I'm going to go through some elements that no one will hear for the first time. But my goal here is to pull together some thoughts and some key elements that I think are critical to the success in anyone's day-to-day as well as their long-term goals and planning. So I'm going to talk about integrity. I'm going to talk about humility, listening skills, accuracy, consistent communication, timely responses, flexibility, as well as technology and the importance in the workplace today. So integrity, clearly one of the #1 keys to success in really anything and everything we do. And in my opinion, it's the only way to lead. One of my quotes, a favorite quote of mine, I should say, is that leaders don't lead, they're followed. And what I mean here essentially is that just because someone has a title does not necessarily make them a leader. Certainly they will be in charge and they'll be the ones that everyone will listen to and they'll do as they're supposed to because we all like to be gainfully employed. But again, does that quantify them as a quote-unquote leader? Not necessarily. It is essential that an individual acts with integrity and leads with integrity, and once that takes place, it's the #1 factor and the #1 element for others to want to follow them as a leader. Humility. It's a simple thing that is oftentimes, pushed aside. It's obviously something that deals with egos a little bit, but humility to me is so important. It's such an important key to success as far as making people want to be on your team and to follow you as a leader. It's okay to say I was wrong or I made a mistake. It shows that you know that you're human and that you actually care about what other people think. You actually care about their opinions and the fact that you're okay with letting them know that you made a mistake, but you're working towards fixing it. Listening. As a communicator, there's obviously the ability to deliver your message, but the next and equally as important role, especially if you're on a team or if you're in a leadership role or not, is listening. Strong communicators are strong listeners. Now, at times, yes, it will require and it will display patience, because oftentimes, especially when things are a little crazy and a little hectic, we tend to listen and we're just kind of listening for the opportunity to jump in and kind of give our explanation, or fast forwarding in our minds what we think the solution is and not truly taking all the information in. It's important as team members, and again, if you're in a leadership role, to be a strong listener. It's going to help you with everything that you do as far as your ability to respond, your ability to manage troublesome situations, and also your ability to just get the full message that's being conveyed to you. Accuracy. As simple of a thing as it sounds, accuracy in striving for 100% accuracy 100% of the time in all types of communication is so important. We have so many different methods now and different platforms of communication, whether it's emails or obviously phone calls and such, and it's just important to always strive for 100% accuracy all the time. I feel that at times this goes to the wayside. Individuals may either throw out an answer, and I realize that there's going to be times where you may not know the answer, but the key here is to just table that situation or that question until you can get that 100% accuracy 100% of the times. This is clearly important in generating and obviously reviewing reports when it comes to things that are actually on paper or computerized or digital. So again, just the importance of accuracy in the day-to-day. Consistent communication. Again, critical to credibility, and really it's the only way to be seen as dependable and accountable. Just being consistent with the way you're communicating, consistent with the information you're presenting, and just being a consistent communicator. Timely responses, something again that to me sounds somewhat simple but so important. It shows respect for people's time. It also lets people know that they can turn to you in a time-sensitive situation. A quick story, I had a friend email me one time, and it was a very quick and short email, and I responded, and then she followed up with a response that said, I emailed you because I'm testing out a new email address, and you're the only person that I know that emails in real time. So I got a laugh out of that. I thought it was kind of funny, but it's something that I take pride in working down those emails. We all get, if we spend some time away from our desk or away from our phones now in today's workplace, the emails obviously can stack up. So this just basically talks about trying to respond, whether it's to voicemails or to emails, in a timely fashion as much as possible. Flexibility. Being willing to change and adapt in this ever-changing work environment and work world that we live in, regardless of your industry. When I attended University of Illinois, we had an equipment manager, and one of the quotes he had up in the equipment room, they do all the pad adjustments and helmet adjustments and such, was that the great ones adjust. And that quote's always stuck with me because I think it's so appropriate for really everything that we do. There is only one constant in life and in the workplace, and that's change. So being flexible and being able to adjust is essential to success. And what better area to talk about flexibility and adjusting but technology. Technology is clearly not really the future, but it's the present. It has to be embraced. It has to be integrated into what you're doing, and you have to be comfortable and proficient and knowledgeable enough to be able to manage and navigate the world and the technology that we're in today. Items such as real-time face-to-face technology, Skype and FaceTime, they've changed everything. Now we're able to connect globally. We're able to talk to, I should say, and see individuals that maybe aren't geographically in the same space that we're in. And again, this is important just in the overall communication and building of relationships and managing a team. So in review, again, some of the keys to success that are critical in my mind are integrity, humility, again, listening and the importance of being a good communicator who listens, accuracy in everything that we do 100% of the time, consistent communication, not being somebody that varies in the way that they're managing themselves or their communication, and being timely with responses. It's a little thing that I think can go a very long way within a team or an organization. being flexible is critical. Not being so rigid or stuck in our ways that we're not able to grow and evolve and be innovative. And lastly, the importance of technology, utilizing it and making it a part of what we're doing as we move forward into a whole new era of information and technology in the workplace. For my final participant poll, I would like to get a feel for how familiar the group is with this concept of emotional intelligence. So at this time, excuse me, if we could just do a quick poll, again, just so I can gain so I can get an understanding of the familiarity, I should say, with this idea of emotional intelligence. And remember to take off that mute this time, Joshua.
Okay. 86% are somewhat familiar, and then 14% have heard of it, but little details.
Excellent, excellent. And again, one of the things that I want to do there is make sure that I kind of discuss this in a way that I go through with the group, but I don't want to ever insult. So if it was 90% extremely familiar, it would change, obviously, my discussing of this. So relationship management, objective number 4, I'm going to discuss, again, like I said, emotional intelligence. I'm also going to talk about cultural intelligence, and then I'm going to wrap it up with the importance of internal and external relationship management. So emotional intelligence. Some of the core elements here are the interaction and treatment of coworkers, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a sec. I'm going to talk about employee quality of life at the workplace, and then I'm going to discuss the effort that it takes to promote and support that positive work environment. You can see the image on the upper right-hand portion there of the screen, and those are, again, the key elements involved in emotional intelligence. They deal with self-awareness. It deals with self-regulation and management, social skills, empathy for others in the workplace, and then the motivation and passion for what it is you do every day when you go to work. Emotional intelligence is really something that I think is really important to keep in mind, not only in your management of yourself in the workplace, but also with your coworkers. And again, when you are in that leadership role, something that I think is so critical to keep in mind as you navigate the day-to-day and the long-term planning with your employees and your teammates. So emotional intelligence here. We're talking about the interaction and treatment of coworkers. Clearly this slide is meant to be in jest, but it's just so important to be cognizant of how we treat our coworkers. Again, this is something that almost is a little rudimentary, but it's so important that we're cognizant of it. And that's really the gist of the relationship management aspect of emotional intelligence, is just being aware, just keeping a sense of how we interact. We don't know what that other individual may be dealing with either in the workplace or even away from work. So as we're interacting, just keeping in mind how we manage and interact and treat and speak to our coworkers. The employee's quality of life at the workplace is one of the cores to emotional intelligence. We all want to go to work. We all want to be able to go to work hard at work. But one of the things that we have to remember is you want to work hard and be nice to people. Again, as simple as it sounds, I mean, we've all either seen or been that individual in the right-hand picture where we may start our day off with that smiley face, but through the course of the day, as things come and go, we've probably all put that other face on, which, again, it's just an understanding and just that being cognizant of the fact that, okay, here's what I'm dealing with, here's what I'm going through today. What face am I putting on? You know, we can't always be the smiley, happy face, and that's not what this is about. But again, it's just about being cognizant and aware of not only your emotions and how you're feeling that day, but how others may be feeling and dealing with some of the things going on in their lives. You know, there needs to be an effort, hopefully by management and really by the team overall, to really promote and support kind of that positive work environment. We all have to spend 8 to 10 or more hours a day work and sometimes with obviously lots of other folks. And really here we're just talking about the fact that it takes effort. It takes the time of thinking about it. It takes the planning and structuring of things that are team building and things that are meant to relieve stress in the workplace. Ultimately, the goal is for a thumbs up, you know, if there was a survey of overall employee satisfaction and work quality in the workplace. So that's kind of what this element's speaking to. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about cultural intelligence. Again, nothing that's probably surprising here, but just something that I think is really, really critical to relationship management. I'm going to talk about the fact that the workforce is a true melting pot. that we have to be sensitive to all those around us, and just about the fact that this is where everything's going. That's a trend that we have in front of us as we speak. So cultural intelligence, nothing secretive here. The workforce, I should say, is a true melting pot. Individuals, all different, shades of color, different religious backgrounds, and so many different demographics, socioeconomics, and all those things come into play. I have to tell you really quick that I'm actually originally from the small island of Jamaica in the Caribbean, so when I saw that image with my little flag on there, I just had to throw that in there. But again, just an image to just demonstrate, obviously, all of the different cultures that are now a part of our global workforce. It's important to be sensitive to all that are around us, every single individual, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's religious beliefs, whatever the case may be. It's important, again, not only as a team member, but also when you're in a position of leadership, to be sensitive to those that are around us. Cultural intelligence is important because this trend will continue and is the future of the workforce and its leaders. Those are the individuals that will be leading us in the years to come. So again, something that is so important and so critical to our success. Next, with relationship management, I'm going to speak about internal and external relationship management. I'm just going to touch on the fact that every relationship matters, regardless of the role or title, and the impact of quickly changing organizational structures. I'm going to talk a little bit about external relationships and negotiations, long-term agreements, and then wrap up in talking about stakeholder and client relationships. So, internal and external relationship management. Every relationship, every interaction matters, regardless of the role or title of individuals. I think we've all probably worked with individuals that don't necessarily adhere to this. If they're interacting with folks that are of a very, very high level or a high role or title, they may not be the same as when they're dealing with somebody that maybe doesn't have the big titles. And that's what this is kind of addressing. We never know how quickly an organization could flip over. The impact of quickly sudden changing organizational structures just simply addresses the fact that an individual that could be reporting to you within 3, 4, 5, or 6 month period, that individual could all of a sudden be the person you're reporting to. So it's very important to be cognizant of the fact that every relationship is important, and regardless of the role or title of those individuals. External relationships in negotiations and long-term agreements, to me, are 100% critical on being able to develop, nurture, maintain any of those type of negotiations and situations. It's critical for us to build those trusts and to have these external relationships and to manage these relationships when it comes to taking care of stakeholders, whether that's other vendors, individuals that work within your industry or directly with your company. And certainly the number one individuals or group that we all want to take care of, regardless of industry, is our clients. So again, building those external relationships, managing those, being cognizant of it, and putting it as something that's not just thought of, but that is practiced and worked on, to me, are so critical to the success of really anyone in the facility management role or that operations and logistical world. So in reviewing objective number 4, we obviously talked about the emotional intelligence concept that's out there and just how important it is in managing relationships. You can't manage relationships without being cognitive of cultural intelligence. So important to understand that and make sure that that's something that is top of mind and an important part of everything that you're doing. And lastly, something that's often overlooked, it's the importance of internal and external relationship management. In my roles, in previous roles of kind of overseeing football operations, one of the things people often ask me is, what's one of the most challenging things of your job? It wasn't any of the logistical matters. It wasn't the planning or the organizing. It was the management of relationships, because there were so many, and it was so critical to doing a job like that, because you don't physically do a lot of the jobs. You have to depend on these relationships and your communication skills to get your jobs done. And clearly individuals are going to be more willing to work with you and for you and to assist in times of need or times of stress when things aren't going as well as you'd hope if you've established those good relationships. So in conclusion, I'm just going to quickly review the session's learning objectives. 1 was becoming the go-to source and trusted expert in your industry and facility. 2nd, I gave some pointers on the measuring success and advancing your career in what's really considered kind of an ambiguous area, usually in most organizations and most industries. I went over the keys to the operations and project or facility manager success, and then obviously we just spoke about the importance of relationship management. I'm hoping that there are some things here in this discussion and in this presentation that help to bring some ideas and some thoughts together that will be takeaways that can be utilized in whatever it is that your industry is as you move along in your career. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up to questions if anyone has some questions.
Yes, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and I'm sure Lloyd would be happy to review that with you. I'll give it just a moment.
Okay. Let me make sure I have the chat box open here.
And then I do want to remind everyone that after the webinar, there will be a copy of a PDF of the PowerPoint will be distributed to everyone, and a link to the recording. Look for that within about 24 hours. Give it just another moment. If I don't see anything, you can certainly, if you have any questions after, you can certainly reach out to Mr. Richards. His email is on the screen. Well, we do have a question come in. It says, in the C-suite, time is dear. Any particular guidance about relationship management in that direction?
I'm sorry. Could you? I'm trying to look on here just to see if I accidentally closed something. Could you repeat the question for me one more time?
Sure. It says, in the C-suite, time is dear.
Right.
Any particular guidance about relationship management in that direction?
Well, in the C-suite, obviously, as you said, that's a difficult question, only because usually it is essential that everything that you do is usually fast-paced. And as far as managing relationships, I guess I'm trying to decipher in my mind if that means within the C-suite, are we talking, or if it's when you're speaking to individuals at that level. I guess I'm not 100% clear on that.
I think speaking to people at that level.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important to obviously try as best as we're able to nurture and to build those relationships. But I would say that that's going to probably be an area that one is going to have to use their judgment as best as possible. I think it's important to try to make connections when they're able. It's important to try to show the information. But I also am cognizant and aware that it's sometimes challenging to get in front of those individuals and to get the opportunity to truly build on that. So again, it's unfortunately that's something that to me is a great question, because I just think it's a challenge that has to be kind of managed on a case-to-case basis, you know, in dealing with different individuals from different levels. But there's always connection points, and I just think it's really important to try to seek those out and to make those as best as and when able.
Great. And then this is, how do you manage a relationship with a coworker who likes to control everything?
Wow. Well, that is a great one. You know, my answer to that would be, again, you know, everything is with patience. I think there has to be some give and take. I think there has to be some dialogue with that individual about the fact that there are simply some things that they're going to have to respectfully allow an individual or the other members of the team to manage and be in charge of. But unfortunately, I think with an individual like that, especially when they're a key player in an organization, which we all have that person, you know, we have to be mindful that that's a part of their personality trait. That's a part of who they are. And so I would say that picking your battles. You know, I think that's a situation where you truly have to not be submissive, but be willing to be flexible and kind of choose your battles on things that you feel are critical that requires pushback, while allowing that individual to kind of be who they are and control the things that maybe aren't as critical or require as much of the back and forth.
Excellent. Okay. I thank you very much, Lloyd.
Excellent.
If anyone, like I said, has any questions, certainly follow up with Lloyd after the presentation. If you go to the next slide.
Okay.
Okay, we do want to let everyone know the next webinar will be Thursday, April 2nd. Jeff Williams and Nicole Laub will be presenting. We'd certainly like for you to join that. Next slide, please. And the FMCC does like to make everyone aware of the other councils that are out there for resources. Okay, next slide. And again, I would like to thank you, and the FMCC would like to thank you for joining us today. Everyone have a great day, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yep, thanks everyone.